The coffee machine sputtered its last drops into the ceramic mug as 26-year-old Caroline Meyer stood in the executive kitchen of Sterling Enterprises, her fingers trembling slightly as she checked her phone for the third time that morning. The small device felt heavier than usual in her palm, weighted down by the secret it contained. A grainy black-and-white image that had appeared on her screen just 48 hours ago, transforming her entire world in an instant. She had worked as the executive assistant to Vincent Sterling for nearly 2 years, and in that time, she had mastered the art of invisibility. People like her, the ones who came from the wrong side of Chicago, who had put themselves through community college while working 3 jobs, who wore the same 5 outfits rotated carefully throughout the week, learned early how to blend into the marble walls and polished floors of places like this. Vincent Sterling inhabited a different universe, one where helicopters waited on rooftops and vacation homes dotted 3 different continents. His upcoming wedding to Diane Whitmore, heiress to the Whitmore Hotel empire, had been splashed across every society page for months. Caroline tucked a strand of honey-blonde hair behind her ear and carried the coffee back to her desk, positioned strategically outside Vincent's corner office on the 42nd floor. Through the glass walls, she could see him on a phone call, his dark hair slightly disheveled in that way that probably cost hundreds of dollars to achieve at whatever salon men like him frequented. At 34, Vincent had built his commercial real estate empire from a modest inheritance into something worth billions, and despite his wealth, he had always treated Caroline with distant but genuine respect. That was precisely why the mistake she had made 20 minutes ago was going to destroy everything. Her best friend Jamie had texted that morning, asking if Caroline had shown her mother the ultrasound yet. Caroline had been sitting at her desk, Vincent's calendar open on one screen, her personal phone in her hand. She had meant to send the image to her mother, Margaret, whose contact sat right below Mr. Sterling in her message list. But her fingers had moved too quickly, her mind preoccupied with the morning's tasks, and she had attached the small gray image showing a tiny bean-shaped form, 8 weeks and 3 days according to the date stamp, to the wrong conversation. The message had included her reply to Jamie. "Not yet. Mom's going to be devastated. I can't afford this baby, but I can't not have it either. The father doesn't even know." He made it clear that night meant nothing. Caroline had realized her mistake 5 seconds after hitting send. 5 seconds that felt like 5 years as she watched the delivered status appear. Then the read notification pop up almost immediately. Vincent was meticulous about checking every message, every email. It was one of the things that made him so successful and so demanding to work for. She had sat frozen at her desk, her heart hammering against her ribs, waiting for the intercom to buzz or for him to emerge from his office with questions. But an hour had passed, then 2, and nothing had happened. Vincent had continued his morning as usual. A conference call with the Tokyo office, a meeting with the construction team about the new development in Austin, another call with the wedding planner about some crisis involving imported orchids. Now, as the morning stretched toward noon, Caroline wondered if perhaps he hadn't seen it, or if he had simply dismissed it as a misdirected message not worth acknowledging. Men like Vincent Sterling didn't concern themselves with the personal problems of their assistants. She was relatively certain she could be on fire at her desk, and he would simply step over her to get to his next meeting, then perhaps send HR to handle the situation. The phone on her desk rang, the internal line from Vincent's office. Caroline's breath caught. "Caroline, could you come in, please?" His voice sounded different than usual, quieter, more careful. She stood on legs that felt like they might buckle, smoothed her modest navy dress, and walked the 15 feet to his door. Through the glass, she could see him standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan, his back to her, hands in his pockets. "Close the door," he said without turning around. Caroline obeyed, her pulse roaring in her ears. This was it. She would be fired, probably escorted out by security, her meager savings nowhere near enough to cover the costs of having a baby alone. Her studio apartment in a questionable neighborhood already consumed most of her paycheck. "I received an interesting message from you this morning," Vincent said, still facing the windows. "I assume it wasn't intended for me." "Mr. Sterling, I am so incredibly sorry. It was an accident. I meant to send it to my mother and I—" Caroline's voice cracked despite her best efforts to maintain composure. "Is it true?" He turned to face her now, and Caroline was startled to see something unexpected in his gray eyes. Not anger, not disgust, but something that looked almost like concern. "Are you 8 weeks pregnant?" Caroline nodded, unable to speak, her throat tight with unshed tears. "And the father?" "He doesn't know. It was—" She paused, humiliation burning through her. "It was one night. Someone I met at my second job. I waitress on weekends at a restaurant in Lincoln Park. He was clear it was just one evening. I haven't seen him since, and I don't have any way to contact him beyond a first name that might not even be real." Vincent was quiet for a long moment, studying her with an intensity that made Caroline want to disappear into the expensive carpet beneath her feet. She had never stood in his office for more than 30 seconds at a time, and never with the door closed. The space smelled like his cologne, something woody and probably worth more than her monthly rent. "Sit down," he said finally, gesturing to one of the leather chairs facing his desk. Caroline sat, perched on the edge of the seat, waiting for the inevitable dismissal. Companies like Sterling Enterprises didn't keep pregnant, unwed assistants who couldn't keep their personal lives separate from their professional ones. Vincent moved to his desk but didn't sit. Instead, he pressed a button on his phone. "Janet, clear my schedule for the rest of the day. Cancel everything, including the dinner with the Whitmore family tonight." "Mr. Sterling, your wedding is in 10 days. His secretary's voice crackled through the speaker, alarmed. "Mrs. Whitmore will be—" "Cancel it," he repeated, his tone leaving no room for argument. He released the button and looked at Caroline again. "How much do you make working here?" The question caught her off guard. $62,000 a year, she said quietly. "And the waitressing?" "Maybe another 15,000 depending on tips." Vincent nodded slowly, as if calculating something in his head. "That's not enough to raise a child in this city, especially alone." "I know," Caroline whispered. "I've been trying to figure it out. Maybe I can move back with my mother in Indiana, find something there. She's not well. She has diabetes and can barely afford her medications. But maybe between the two of us we could—" "No," Vincent interrupted. The single word hung in the air between them. Caroline looked up, confused. "No? I have a different proposal." He leaned against his desk, his expression unreadable. "What if I told you that I could solve your problem, and you could solve mine?" "I don't understand." Vincent pulled his phone from his pocket and scrolled for a moment before turning the screen toward her. It showed a tabloid website with a headline that made Caroline's stomach drop. "Sterling Empire airs Wild Night. Billionaire's bachelor party scandal surfaces." The article showed photos of Vincent at what appeared to be an upscale restaurant, but in the background of one image, partially obscured, was another man who looked remarkably similar to Vincent. The caption speculated about inappropriate behavior at what was supposedly Vincent's bachelor party. "That's not me," Vincent said quietly. "That's my younger brother Marcus. He has a talent for making poor decisions and an unfortunate resemblance to me. This photo was taken 3 months ago. The press doesn't know it's him. They think it's me. Diane's family is using it as leverage." "Leverage for what?" "To restructure our prenuptial agreement. The Whitmores want controlling interest in 3 of my most valuable properties. If I don't agree, they'll leak more information, real or fabricated, and destroy my reputation right before several crucial deals close." His jaw tightened. "I've spent 2 years negotiating this marriage like a business merger, which is essentially what it is. Diane and I have an understanding. There's no love involved, just mutual benefit, but I'm tired of being manipulated." Caroline still didn't understand what any of this had to do with her, but a strange feeling was building in her chest, something between hope and terror. Vincent set his phone down and looked directly at her. What if you weren't alone? What if that baby had a father's name on the birth certificate, someone who could provide everything you both needed? The implication hit Caroline like a physical blow. "You can't be serious. I'm completely serious." Vincent's voice was steady, businesslike, as if he were proposing a real estate deal rather than something that would alter both their lives forever. "You need financial security and support for your child. I need an escape from a marriage that's become a trap. We could help each other. You want to pretend to be my baby's father?" Caroline couldn't keep the disbelief from her voice. Not pretend. Legally claim paternity. Marry you. Raise this child as my own. He paused. I'm not suggesting a real marriage in the traditional sense, at least not initially, but it would be real on paper. You and the baby would have everything you need. In exchange, I get out of the Whitmore situation and gain something they can't manipulate. A family. Caroline's mind spun. This couldn't be real. Men like Vincent Sterling didn't marry their assistants, didn't claim other men's children, didn't throw away carefully planned society weddings for pregnant employees they barely knew. Why would you do this? She asked, her voice barely audible. Vincent was quiet for a long moment, his gaze drifting to the windows again. Because I've spent the last decade building an empire, and somewhere along the way I forgot to build a life. I'm about to marry a woman who sees me as a business acquisition. When I saw that ultrasound this morning, saw someone fighting to do the right thing even when it's terrifying and impossible. He stopped, seeming to search for words. It reminded me what actually matters. And maybe this is insane, but it's the first thing that's felt real in years. Caroline's hand unconsciously moved to her still flat stomach. Could she actually consider this? It was absurd. Impossible. It solved all her problems in one sweep while creating entirely new ones. I need time to think, she managed. You have until the end of the day, Vincent said, his businessman persona sliding back into place. After that, I announce my engagement to Diane is off regardless. But whether you're the reason, whether you and that baby become my family, that choice is yours. He moved toward the door, then paused with his hand on the handle. For what it's worth, Caroline, in 2 years you've been the most competent, hardworking, honest person I've encountered in my professional life. If I'm going to build something real, I can't think of anyone I'd rather build it with. Then he was gone, leaving Caroline alone in his office, staring at the ultrasound image still displayed on her phone screen, trying to comprehend how her entire existence had just shifted on its axis in the span of 20 minutes. Caroline didn't return to her desk immediately. She stood in Vincent's empty office for several minutes, her legs unsteady, her mind racing through 1,000 impossibilities that were somehow being offered as reality. Through the windows, Lake Michigan stretched endlessly, gray-blue and indifferent to the chaos of human lives playing out in the towers along its shore. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jamie. Did you tell your mom yet? Want me to come over tonight? Caroline stared at the message, then at the ultrasound image still glowing on her screen. 8 weeks and 3 days, a cluster of cells that was somehow already a person, already depending on her to make impossible choices. She thought about her mother's small house in Terre Haute, the peeling paint, and the perpetual smell of medical bills piling up. She thought about her studio apartment, where the radiator clanked all night, and her neighbors' arguments bled through the thin walls. She thought about the spreadsheet she'd created last week, calculating costs, diapers, formula, childcare, medical expenses, each number a small hammer driving home the impossibility of her situation. And then she thought about Vincent Sterling's offer, which made absolutely no sense from any rational perspective. When she finally emerged from his office, Vincent was gone. Janet, his secretary, looked up from her computer with barely concealed curiosity. The older woman had worked for Sterling Enterprises for 15 years and had perfected the art of knowing everything while appearing to know nothing. Mr. Sterling left for an appointment, Janet said carefully. He said you should take the rest of the day off. Paid, of course. Of course. Because Vincent Sterling could casually offer half-days and marriage proposals with equal ease, as if both were simply line items in a budget. Caroline gathered her things mechanically. Her worn purse, her lunch container with its sad salad, her jacket from Target that she'd bought 3 years ago. In the elevator descending from the 42nd floor, she caught her reflection in the polished steel doors. She looked exactly like what she was, a girl from nowhere trying to survive in a city that ate people like her for breakfast. The November wind hit her as she exited the building, cutting through her inadequate jacket. She walked without direction, her feet carrying her along Michigan Avenue where window displays showcased jewelry that cost more than she'd earned in her entire life. A wedding dress in one window stopped her, an explosion of white silk and crystal beading, the kind of dress someone like Diane Whitmore would wear, or would have worn, if Vincent actually went through with canceling the wedding. Had he already done it? Was Diane Whitmore right now receiving the news that her carefully planned society marriage was dissolving because of a misdirected text message and a pregnant assistant? Caroline's phone rang, her mother's number. She almost didn't answer, but guilt propelled her thumb to the screen. "Hi, Mom." "Caroline, sweetheart, I've been trying to reach you." Margaret Meyer's voice carried the perpetual tiredness of someone fighting battles on multiple fronts. "The pharmacy called about my insulin. There's been some mix-up with the insurance again. I hate to ask, but could you—" "How much?" Caroline interrupted, already knowing the answer would be money she didn't have. $340. "I know it's a lot, honey. If you can't, I'll figure something out. Maybe I can split the prescription, make it last longer." "Mom, no, don't do that." Caroline closed her eyes against the sting of tears, her mother rationing life-saving medication while Caroline stood on a street corner contemplating a marriage proposal from a billionaire. The absurdity was almost laughable. "I'll transfer the money tonight. You're such a good girl, Caroline. I don't know what I'd do without you." The words landed like stones in Caroline's chest. After they said goodbye, she stood on the corner of Michigan and Randolph, watching people rush past with their important lives and their problems that probably didn't include impossible choices between pride and survival. Her phone buzzed again, this time an unknown number with a brief message. "The offer stands. No pressure. Just possibility. VS." He'd given her his personal number. In 2 years of working for him, she'd never had direct access to Vincent Sterling outside of office communication systems. It felt intimate in a way that made her uncomfortable, this small thread connecting them outside the formal structure of employer and employee. Caroline found herself walking toward the library, the Harold Washington branch where she used to study during her community college years. The building welcomed her like an old friend, all glass and steel, and the comforting smell of books and old radiators. She found a quiet corner on the 5th floor and did what she always did when life overwhelmed her. She researched marriage laws in Illinois, paternity establishment, prenuptial agreements. She read about women throughout history who had made strategic marriages for survival, for protection, for their children's futures. She read about modern marriages of convenience, about couples who built real partnerships from practical beginnings. She read until her eyes burned and the afternoon light faded beyond the windows. And then she read something that made her stop. An article about children growing up without fathers, the statistical impacts, the lifelong consequences. Her own father had left when she was 4. A vague memory of a man who smelled like cigarettes and made her mother cry. She had grown up watching her mother work herself to exhaustion, watching opportunities close because there was never enough money, never enough support, never enough of anything. Could she really condemn her own child to that same struggle when another option existed? Her phone rang again. This time, Vincent himself. "Have you eaten?" he asked without preamble. "What?" "It's 7 o'clock. You've been gone for 8 hours. Have you eaten anything?" Caroline realized she hadn't. The sad salad sat untouched in her bag. "I'm fine. There's a small Italian restaurant on Taylor Street, Francesca's. Do you know it?" "I know the neighborhood. Little Italy, where she occasionally picked up extra shifts at a bakery. Meet me there in 30 minutes. We should talk properly, away from the office." He paused. "Please." The please surprised her more than anything else that day. Men like Vincent Sterling didn't say please to people like her. 28 minutes later, Caroline stood outside Francesca's, a modest family-run place with red checkered tablecloths visible through the steamed windows. It was so far removed from the restaurants Vincent Sterling typically frequented that she almost wondered if he'd given her the wrong address. But then he emerged from a black car, not a limousine, just a regular sedan that he appeared to be driving himself, and walked toward her. He'd changed from his suit into jeans and a dark sweater, and for the first time since she'd known him, Vincent Sterling looked almost ordinary. "Thank you for coming," he said, opening the door for her. Inside, the restaurant was warm and loud with the sounds of families eating together, children laughing, old Italian men arguing good-naturedly at the bar. A tiny woman with steel-gray hair spotted Vincent and rushed over, launching into rapid Italian while kissing both his cheeks. "Vincenzo, where have you been? It's been months." "Busy, Nonna Rosa. Too busy." He smiled at the woman with genuine warmth. "This is my friend Caroline. We need a quiet table." if you have one. Nonna Rosa studied Caroline with sharp eyes that missed nothing, then nodded slowly. For you. Always. Come. She led them to a small booth in the back corner, away from the main dining room's chaos. As they sat, Caroline couldn't reconcile this scene with the man she thought she knew. You come here often enough to have a regular table and a nickname? She asked. Vincent had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. My mother's family is from this neighborhood, 3 generations back, but Rosa's family and mine go way back. I used to come here with my grandmother when I was young. After she died, I kept coming. It's one of the few places I can just be Vincent instead of Vincent Sterling, heir to whatever empire the press decides I'm running that week. Nonna Rosa returned with bread, olive oil, and wine that neither of them had ordered. She poured 2 glasses, gave Vincent a meaningful look that clearly communicated something Caroline couldn't interpret, and disappeared again. She thinks you're my girlfriend, Vincent said quietly. I've never brought anyone here before. The weight of that statement settled between them. Caroline tore a piece of bread, using the action to avoid his eyes. I did it, Vincent said abruptly. This afternoon. I called Diane and told her the wedding was off. Caroline's hand froze halfway to her mouth. What did she say? She was furious, threatened lawsuits, threatened to ruin my reputation, threatened everything she could think of. Her father called 20 minutes later with similar threats. He took a sip of wine. Then, about an hour ago, I received a very calm, very cold email from Diane herself. Want to know what it said? Caroline nodded, unable to speak. Thank God. I was trying to figure out how to break it off without losing my trust fund. My lawyer will send the paperwork. Turns out, we were both trapped in a performance, both too proud or too stubborn to admit it. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. 2 years of my life negotiating a marriage neither of us actually wanted. I'm sorry, Caroline said, though she wasn't sure what she was apologizing for. Don't be. It's the first honest thing that's happened to me in years. Vincent leaned forward, his gray eyes intent. I meant what I said this morning, Caroline. I'm not asking you to love me. I'm not even asking you to live with me right away if that makes you uncomfortable. But I am asking you to let me do this. Let me give that baby my name. Let me provide what you need. Let me be part of something real instead of another calculated move in the game I've been playing. Why? The question burst from Caroline before she could stop it. Why would you want to tie yourself to someone like me? I'm nobody. I have nothing to offer you. You're wrong. Vincent's voice was quiet but firm. You're the first person in my world who doesn't want anything from me except a fair day's pay for a fair day's work. You've never asked for special treatment, never tried to leverage your position, never treated me like a walking bank account. Do you know how rare that is? How valuable? That's just basic decency. Exactly. And it's almost impossible to find. He reached across the table, not quite touching her hand, but close enough that she could feel the warmth of his palm. I'm 34 years old, Caroline. I've built something successful, but I've been miserable doing it. Every relationship is a transaction. Every friendship has an agenda. I'm tired of it. When I saw that ultrasound this morning, I saw a chance to build something different, something genuine. This is insane, Caroline whispered. People don't do this. People do what they need to do to survive. You are willing to move back to Indiana, to sacrifice your life here to give your baby a chance. That's not so different from what I'm proposing. The only difference is scale. Nonna Rosa appeared with plates of pasta neither of them had ordered. Rigatoni in a rich meat sauce that smelled like heaven. She set them down, studied the tension at the table, and patted Vincent's shoulder. Mangia, she commanded. Everything is better with food. They ate in silence for several minutes. The pasta was incredible, and Caroline realized she was actually hungry for the first time in weeks. Morning sickness had made most food unappealing, but this tasted like comfort and safety. If I agreed, Caroline said slowly, what would it actually look like? Vincent set down his fork, giving her his full attention. We'd get married quickly and quietly. I'd set up accounts in your name, enough that you never have to worry about money again, for you or your mother or the baby. You could keep working if you wanted or not. We'd figure out living arrangements that work for both of us. And we'd take it day by day, building whatever this becomes. And if it doesn't work, if we realize it was a mistake, then we end it as gracefully as we can. And you and the baby are still provided for. That would be in writing, legally binding. You'd never be left without support, regardless of what happens between us. It was too much. Too generous. Too perfect. What do you really get out of this, Vincent? There has to be something more. He was quiet for a long moment, swirling wine in his glass. The truth? I'm lonely. I'm surrounded by people all the time, but I'm completely alone. I want what my grandparents had, what I saw at this table 20 years ago. Partnership. Family. Something real. He looked up at her. Maybe that makes me selfish. Maybe I'm using your situation to fill a void in my own life, but at least I'm being honest about it. The honesty was what did it. Not the money, not the security, but the raw vulnerability in his admission. I need one promise, Caroline heard herself say. No matter what happens, you won't use this against me. You won't use the baby as leverage, or take them away, or— Never, Vincent interrupted, his voice fierce. That child deserves better than the games adults play. I promise you, Caroline, whatever we do with their best interests first. Always. Caroline looked down at her plate, at the half-eaten pasta, at her hands that shook slightly as they gripped her fork. She thought about the ultrasound image, about the tiny life depending on her to make impossible choices. She thought about her mother's insulin and her own exhaustion and the very real possibility that pride was a luxury she couldn't afford. Okay, she whispered. Okay, let's do this. Vincent's entire posture changed, relief washing over his features. Really? On one condition. We do this honestly. No pretending to feel things we don't feel. No performance for the press or the public, just honesty, partnership, like you said, deal. He extended his hand across the table, formal and businesslike. Caroline took it, and the moment their palms connected, she felt the weight of the decision settle over both of them. This was real. This was happening. In agreeing to let Vincent Sterling claim her baby, she was stepping into a life she couldn't begin to imagine. When? She asked. As soon as possible. I'll have my lawyer draw up the papers tomorrow. We can be married by the end of the week if you're willing. The end of the week. 5 days until Caroline Meyer became Caroline Sterling, until her life transformed completely. Nonna Rosa appeared again, this time with tiramisu and 2 small glasses of limoncello. She set them down with a knowing smile, as if she understood exactly what had just been decided at this small table in the back of her restaurant. Per la familia, she said softly. For the family. Caroline lifted her glass with trembling fingers, meeting Vincent's eyes across the table. In them, she saw the same fear and hope that churned in her own chest. 2 people taking a leap into the unknown, bound together by circumstance and a tiny life that neither of them had planned for. What neither of them knew, as they sealed their agreement with sweet wine and Nonna Rosa's blessing, was that the security cameras outside the restaurant had already captured their meeting. By morning, the photos would be in the hands of someone who had every reason to destroy what they were building before it even began. The morning after their dinner at Francesca's, Caroline woke in her studio apartment to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Her heart hammered as she scrolled through them, most from numbers she didn't recognize, but several from Jamie and 3 from her mother. Jamie's messages were increasingly frantic. Call me now. Caroline, what the hell is going on? Why is your picture all over social media with Vincent Sterling? With shaking hands, Caroline opened her browser and typed her own name. The results made her stomach drop. Sterling heirs secret romance. Billionaire caught in intimate dinner with mystery woman. The photos were grainy but unmistakable. Vincent opening the car door for her, the 2 of them visible through Francesca's windows, their hands clasped across the table. Somehow, the photographer had even captured the moment they'd toasted with limoncello, transforming a simple gesture into something that looked decidedly romantic. The articles speculated wildly. Some suggested she was the reason for his broken engagement. Others dug into her background. Working-class assistant from Indiana appeared in multiple headlines. A few had already found her social media accounts, dissecting her modest life for public consumption. Her phone rang again. Vincent's number. Have you seen it? His voice was tight. Yes. I'm sorry. I should have anticipated this. Diane's father must have had us followed. He paused. How are you handling it? Caroline looked around her tiny apartment, at the water stain on the ceiling and the window that didn't quite close properly. I don't know. I've never been in the news before. People are saying terrible things. Don't read the comments. Never read the comments. Vincent's tone softened. Listen, this actually accelerates our timeline. The story is out there now. We need to control the narrative before it controls us. Can you meet me at my lawyer's office in an hour? An hour? Vincent, I need to think. This is all happening so fast. I know it's overwhelming. But Caroline, those photographers aren't going to leave you alone now. They'll be at your apartment, at your work, everywhere. The fastest way to shut this down is to make it official, to give them a story that ends the speculation. He was right, even though every instinct in Caroline's body screamed at her to run. Okay, send me the address. 45 minutes later, Caroline stood outside a glass tower in the Loop, her hair still damp from the world's fastest shower, wearing the best outfit she owned, a gray dress she usually reserved for important meetings. A photographer materialized from nowhere, camera clicking rapidly. Caroline Meyer, is it true you're pregnant with Vincent Sterling's baby? The question hit her like a slap. How did they know? The ultrasound had only gone to Vincent, unless... A black SUV pulled up to the curb, and Vincent emerged, immediately positioning himself between Caroline and the photographer. That's enough. She has no comment. He guided her into the building with a protective hand on her lower back, the gesture both comforting and strange. In the elevator, Caroline fought to catch her breath. They know about the baby, she said. How do they know? Vincent's jaw tightened. Diane. She must have someone at the office who saw the message or heard something. She's trying to paint me as the villain, the boss who got his assistant pregnant and abandoned his fiancée. But that's not what happened. The truth doesn't matter to people like the Whitmores. Only leverage does. The elevator opened onto the 48th floor. But we're going to turn this around. By this afternoon, we're going to give them a different story. The lawyer's office was all dark wood and leather, the kind of place designed to intimidate. Richard Crawford was a silver-haired man in his 60s who greeted them with professional warmth and no visible judgment about the situation. Vincent explained the basics, Richard said, gesturing for them to sit. I've drawn up preliminary papers. This is a prenuptial agreement that protects both of you, along with the legal documents for paternity establishment. He slid a thick folder across the desk. Caroline opened it, her eyes swimming over legal language she barely understood. Vincent leaned closer, his shoulder brushing hers as he pointed to specific sections. This part establishes a trust fund for the baby, $5 million, inaccessible to either of us, held until they turn 25. This section sets up your personal accounts, $2 million immediately, with a monthly allowance of $50,000 regardless of our marital status. Caroline's vision blurred. $2 million, $50,000 per month. The numbers were so large they became abstract. Meaningless. If the marriage ends for any reason, Vincent continued, you receive an additional settlement of $10 million plus the house in Lincoln Park that I'm deeding to you today. Your mother's medical expenses are covered for life through a separate trust, and this clause ensures that I can never pursue custody of the child without your explicit consent. This is too much, Caroline whispered. Vincent, this is... fair. He interrupted firmly. This is fair. You're giving me legitimacy, a way out of a toxic situation, and a chance at something real. This is the least I can do to ensure you're protected. Richard cleared his throat. There's also a clause about the marriage itself. Vincent wanted to ensure you understood that there's no requirement for... He paused delicately. Physical intimacy. The marriage can be as much or as little as you both decide. Caroline felt heat rise in her cheeks. Of course. This was a business arrangement. The fact that her baby would legally be Vincent's didn't change the fundamental nature of their agreement. I need you to understand something, Caroline, Vincent said, turning to face her fully. You can walk away right now. Take the money for your mother's medical bills. Take a settlement for yourself, and we never speak of this again. I won't hold you to anything. But if you sign these papers, we're committed to seeing this through, at least for the baby's sake. Caroline thought about the photographer outside, about her mother's insulin, about the tiny life growing inside her that deserved better than struggle and uncertainty. She thought about Vincent's loneliness and her own, about two people trying to build something functional from broken pieces. "Where's the pen?" she asked. Relief flickered across Vincent's face. For the next hour, they signed document after document while Richard explained each one. By the time they finished, Caroline's hand ached, and her head spun with the magnitude of what she'd just done. "The marriage license can be filed today," Richard said. "Illinois has no waiting period. You could be married as early as tomorrow." "Let's do it," Vincent said. "Small ceremony. Just us and whatever witnesses we need." Richard nodded. "I can arrange for a judge. My office tomorrow at 2 p.m. It was really happening. In less than 24 hours, Caroline Meyer would become Caroline Sterling. They left through a back exit to avoid the photographers, but it didn't matter. By the time they reached Vincent's car, Caroline's phone was exploding with messages again. This time, one made her blood run cold. It was from a number she hadn't seen in 3 months, from the night that had changed everything. "Saw you on the news. That's my kid you're carrying. We need to talk. Derek." Caroline stopped walking so abruptly that Vincent nearly collided with her. "What's wrong?" She showed him the message, watching his expression darken as he read. "The father," Vincent said flatly. "The one who wanted nothing to do with you. He never told me his last name. I had no way to find him. But now you're about to marry a billionaire, and suddenly he's interested." Vincent's voice carried an edge she'd never heard before. Classic. "What do I do?" Vincent took her phone and blocked the number without hesitation. Nothing. He had his chance. He made his choice. This baby is mine now, legally and in every other way that matters. He has no claim. But what if he fights it? What if he tries to— Caroline. Vincent's hand settled on her shoulders, gentle but grounding. "I promise you, he won't get near you or that baby. I have the best lawyers in the state. We'll handle this." But even as he said it, Caroline felt the first real crack in the foundation they were trying to build. Derek hadn't wanted her when she was nobody, but now that she represented money and opportunity, he'd come crawling back. It was exactly the kind of complication she'd feared, the kind that could unravel everything. They drove to Caroline's apartment so she could pack. The photographers had indeed found it. 3 of them camped outside the entrance. Vincent called building security and had them removed, but the damage was done. Caroline's privacy was gone, transformed overnight into public property. Inside her studio, surrounded by the modest possessions of her old life, Caroline felt the enormity of her decision crash over her. Tomorrow she would marry a man she barely knew. In 7 months, she would have a baby. Everything she understood about herself and her future had evaporated in the span of 48 hours. "We don't have to do this," Vincent said quietly from the doorway. "Even now you can change your mind." Caroline looked at him, this complicated, lonely billionaire who had somehow become her lifeline. "Do you want to change your mind?" "No." His answer was immediate and certain. "Marrying Diane would have been the biggest mistake of my life. This—" He gestured between them. "This feels right, even if it's unconventional." "Okay then." Caroline pulled her suitcase from the closet. "Help me pack. I guess I'm moving." They worked in comfortable silence, Caroline folding her modest wardrobe, while Vincent carefully wrapped the few photos she had, her mother, her grandparents. A picture of herself graduating from community college that represented years of night classes and exhaustion. "Tell me about your family," Vincent said, holding the graduation photo. "Not much to tell. Mom raised me alone after Dad left. She worked 2 jobs most of my childhood. We never had much, but she made sure I knew I was loved." Caroline folded a sweater. "What about yours?" "Old money that my father nearly destroyed through bad investments. I spent my 20s rebuilding what he lost, proving I wasn't like him. My mother died when I was 22. Marcus, my brother, deals with the family legacy by pretending none of it matters and making spectacular mistakes." Vincent set the photo down carefully. We're not close. That's sad. It's reality in families like mine. Everything is about appearance and achievement. Love is secondary to success. That's not how I want to raise this baby, Caroline said firmly. Vincent looked at her with something that might have been admiration. Me neither. A knock at the door made them both freeze. Caroline approached cautiously and checked the peephole. Her mother stood in the hallway, looking small and worried and completely out of place in the dingy corridor. Mom? Caroline opened the door. What are you doing here? Margaret Meyer took one look at her daughter's face and pulled her into a fierce hug. What I should have done weeks ago. My baby girl is all over the news, and I wasn't going to stay in Indiana while you face this alone. Over her mother's shoulder, Caroline met Vincent's eyes. He gave her a small nod and quietly stepped into the hallway to give them privacy. Mom, I can explain. Are you pregnant? Margaret pulled back, searching Caroline's face. There was no point in lying. Yes, 8 weeks. Her mother's eyes filled with tears, but not the disappointment Caroline had feared. Oh, sweetheart. And this man, this billionaire, is he the father? It's complicated. Complicated how? Margaret's voice sharpened with protective instinct. Caroline Marie Meyer, what have you gotten yourself into? So Caroline told her everything, the real father's rejection, the accidental message, Vincent's proposal, the agreement they'd made. Her mother listened without interrupting, her expression cycling through shock, concern, and finally, something that looked like grudging acceptance. This is insane, Margaret said when Caroline finished. I know, but you're doing it anyway. I have to, Mom, for the baby. And for you, your medical bills. Don't you dare make this about me, Margaret interrupted fiercely. I don't want you marrying some man you don't love because of my diabetes. It's not just that. Mom, he's kind, he's honest. He's offering us a chance at a life where we don't have to struggle every single day. Can I really say no to that? Margaret was quiet for a long moment, studying her daughter's face. Do you trust him? Caroline thought about Vincent blocking Derek's number without hesitation, about his promise to protect her and the baby, about the vulnerability in his eyes when he admitted his loneliness. Yes, she said, I do. Then I trust your judgment. Margaret squeezed her hand. But if he hurts you, billionaire or not, he'll answer to me. Despite everything, Caroline laughed. I'll let him know. Vincent returned a few minutes later with coffee and pastries from somewhere, because apparently billionaires could materialize food from thin air. He greeted Margaret with respectful formality that gradually warmed into genuine conversation as they discussed Caroline's childhood, her work ethic, her dreams. She wanted to be a teacher, Margaret told Vincent, before life got in the way. She's brilliant with children. Mom? Caroline protested, embarrassed, but Vincent was looking at her with new interest. Why didn't you pursue it? Teaching degrees cost money and time. I had neither. Caroline shrugged. It's fine. I like my job. Liked. Vincent corrected gently. Past tense. After tomorrow you can do whatever you want, including going back to school if that interests you. The casual way he said it, as if graduate school was just another checkbox on a list, reminded Caroline of the vast gulf between their worlds. But it also opened a door she'd thought permanently closed years ago. By evening, Caroline's studio was packed into boxes, her entire life fitting into the back of Vincent's SUV with room to spare. Margaret had agreed to stay at Vincent's house, mansion really, for the week, at least until after the wedding. As they drove through Chicago toward Lincoln Park and whatever her new life would be, Caroline pressed her hand against the window and watched her old neighborhood disappear behind them. Tomorrow she would marry Vincent Sterling. In a week, the media would find something else to obsess over. In 7 months, she would hold her baby for the first time. What Caroline didn't know, as they turned onto the tree-lined street where Vincent's house waited, was that Derek had already hired a lawyer. The blocked message had only made him more determined, and the team he'd assembled was preparing to challenge Vincent's paternity claim with everything they had. The battle for Caroline's baby and the future they were all trying to build was just beginning. The wedding took place in Richard Crawford's office at exactly 2 p.m., witnessed by the lawyer's assistant and Nonna Rosa, who Vincent had insisted on inviting. Caroline wore a simple cream-colored dress that her mother had purchased that morning. and Vincent wore a dark suit that probably cost more than Caroline's previous annual salary. There were no flowers, no music, no guests beyond the 4 people required to make it legal. Judge Patricia Moreno, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes, performed the ceremony in less than 10 minutes. When she pronounced them husband and wife, Vincent kissed Caroline's cheek with such gentle formality that it felt more like a business handshake than a wedding kiss. "Congratulations," the judge said warmly, handing them their marriage certificate. "I hope you'll be very happy together." Caroline stared at the document, at her new name printed in official lettering, Caroline Sterling. It didn't feel real. Nonna Rosa had other ideas about the celebration. She'd brought champagne, sparkling cider for Caroline, and insisted they toast properly. Salute to new beginnings and beautiful babies. Margaret wiped tears from her eyes, though whether they were happy or worried, Caroline couldn't tell. Her mother had been reserved since arriving in Chicago, clearly overwhelmed by Vincent's world, but trying her best to be supportive. They had dinner that night at Vincent's house, a stunning 3-story brownstone in Lincoln Park that Caroline would apparently now call home, the house that Vincent had deeded to her, ensuring she would always have security regardless of what happened to their marriage. As Margaret helped Nonna Rosa prepare an elaborate Italian feast in the kitchen, the 2 women bonding over recipes and grandmother stories, Vincent led Caroline upstairs to show her the bedrooms. "This is the master suite," he said, opening a door to reveal a spacious room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a private garden. "It's yours. I've moved my things to the guest room down the hall." "Vincent, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. This is your home now, Caroline. You should be comfortable." He showed her the walk-in closet, already stocked with maternity clothes in her size, and the adjoining bathroom with its enormous tub. "The nursery is across the hall. I took the liberty of hiring a decorator, but if you hate everything, we'll start over." The nursery was painted a soft sage green with white furniture and a rocking chair positioned by the window. It was beautiful and thoughtful, and somehow made everything feel impossibly real. "It's perfect," Caroline whispered. They stood there in silence, 2 strangers bound by law and circumstance, staring at the room where Caroline's baby would sleep. Vincent's baby now, legally if not biologically. "I got a call from my lawyer this afternoon," Vincent said quietly. "Derek, the biological father, has filed a petition to establish paternity and seek custody." Caroline's hands instinctively moved to her stomach. "Can he do that?" "He can try, but Richard is confident we can fight it. We're married now, and Illinois law presumes that you're my child. Derek will have to prove paternity, which means genetic testing after the baby is born. That gives us 7 months to build an unshakable case that I'm this child's father in every way that matters. What if we lose?" Vincent turned to face her fully. "We won't. I promise you, Caroline, I will not let him take this baby from you. From us." The fierceness in his voice surprised her. In just 2 days, Vincent had somehow become invested in this child's future, protective in a way that went beyond their business arrangement. Dinner was chaotic and warm, Nonna Rosa telling embarrassing stories about young Vincent, while Margaret shared equally mortifying tales about Caroline's childhood. The 2 older women treated the marriage like a genuine love match, either oblivious to or deliberately ignoring the transactional nature of the arrangement. After they left, Caroline and Vincent cleaned up together in companionable silence. It felt oddly domestic, this simple act of washing dishes and putting away food. "Thank you," Caroline said as she dried the last plate. "For all of this, for protecting me and the baby, for giving my mother peace of mind. I know this isn't what you imagined for your life." Vincent leaned against the counter, studying her. "Honestly, my imagined life was pretty miserable. This," he gestured around the kitchen, at the evidence of family dinner, "this is better." Over the following weeks, they fell into an unexpected rhythm. Vincent went to work, and Caroline tried to adjust to not working, though she often found herself at the Sterling Enterprises office anyway, unable to break the habit. They had dinner together most evenings, conversations gradually moving from awkward small talk to genuine exchanges about their days, their pasts, their hopes for the future. The media frenzy eventually died down, replaced by new scandals and new headlines. Derek's legal challenge moved slowly through the courts, but Richard remained confident. The baby grew, Caroline's stomach beginning to show, and Vincent surprised her by attending every doctor's appointment, asking questions, and taking notes like he was studying for the most important exam of his life. One evening in her 4th month, Caroline found Vincent in the nursery, assembling a crib with intense concentration. "You don't have to do that," she said from the doorway. "We could hire someone. I want to." He didn't look up from the instruction manual. "My father never built anything for me or Marcus. Everything was always done by staff. I want this baby to know that their father—" He paused, the word hanging in the air, "that I cared enough to build their furniture myself, even if I'm terrible at it." Caroline sat in the rocking chair, watching him work. "You're going to be a good father, Vincent." He looked up then, something vulnerable in his expression. "You really think so?" "I know so." That night marked a shift between them. The careful distance they'd maintained began to close, not into romance exactly, but into genuine partnership. They were building something neither had expected. Friendship, trust, maybe even the foundation of something more. When Derek's lawyer finally dropped the custody petition 2 months later, deterred by Vincent's legal team and the clear evidence of a stable married home, Vincent took Caroline to Francesca's to celebrate. Nonna Rosa fussed over Caroline's growing belly and predicted it would be a boy with strong lungs. "To victories," Vincent said, raising his glass. "To new beginnings," Caroline countered, touching her glass to his. As she looked across the table at the man who had changed her life so completely, Caroline realized something that both terrified and thrilled her. She was falling in love with her husband. The arrangement that had begun as pure practicality was transforming into something real, something neither of them had dared to hope for. Vincent must have seen something in her expression, because his own softened. "Caroline, I know," she interrupted gently. "Me too." They didn't need to say more. The understanding passed between them like a promise, like a beginning to the marriage they'd legally started months ago, but were only now truly entering. 3 months later, Caroline gave birth to a healthy baby boy they named Michael Vincent Sterling. As Vincent held his son for the first time, tears streaming down his face, Caroline understood that biology meant nothing compared to choice. Vincent had chosen them, and they had chosen him, and together they had built a family from impossible circumstances. Their love story hadn't been conventional, but it was real. And in the end, that was all that mattered.